Hello and welcome to another Iceberg video, and the first of a series of retro rankings on the channel, where I'll be covering some highlights and lowlights of Monstercat and NCS in years prior. My plan for now includes 4 episodes: the best NCS songs of 2019, the worst Monstercat songs of 2020, the worst NCS songs of 2021, and my personal favorite, the best Monstercat songs of 2022. As someone who's tuned back in around the middle of 2023, it feels like both labels are more random than they used to be in terms of material and roster, and that's why previous years have to be ranked a little differently. I don't see it being a series to add onto at the moment because, well, we've got the year-end rankings to talk about, but I figured this would be something interesting to do. With NCS, some of my rankings, mostly worst lists, came with a sort of theme. And in terms of the best of 2019, I think that theme revolves around a certain genre: melodic dubstep. So many highlights of that year were at least adjacent with that genre, and the ones near the very top represent either the best of their discography or the best trends or moments around the label, especially revisiting them now. It's funny because initially I was going to do the best NCS songs of 2018, but just analyzing from monthly rankings, I think 2019 had even more to offer. For those who haven't seen my ranking videos before, every list proper will have 1 track per artist, and it will be original songs only. There won't be any dishonorable mentions for my planned worst lists in the series, but there will be honorable mentions for this video and the best Monstercat songs of 2022. So with that, let's start with those honorable mentions. Burning Bridges by Beatcore and Ashley Apollodor. It does well to carry the essence of the more nostalgic side of melodic dubstep with a nice chord stack, solid vocal chops, and great arps as it progresses. Dishonest by Omri. Caught my attention just recently with unique instrumentation in the break and a more emphatic production in the drop as a hidden drumstep gem. Hollow Life by Triton featuring Ratfoot, another drumstep-oriented song with a more melancholic atmosphere and a rocktronic-focused style in the drop. The leads sit very well in the mix, and the ambience is great throughout. Game Time by Debris and Jonth. Remember when Jonth made house music? Here the various elements in the drop are hard-hitting, and that makes for a fun and energetic production. Ascend by Element D and Chris Linton. This was a song I remember hearing back then that I didn't even realize was on the label until recently. And like with a lot of other euphoric hardstyle tracks, it's the melody that carries this one. Habits by Axon and Hilo featuring Acacia. A melodic trap song with solid synth and string production in the drops and great metallic plucks in the off drops. Gizmo by Sin Cole. A tropical house release that makes the most out of a nice chord progression and some plucky elements that lead its production. And finally, Time for Polka by Naviro. Both on and off the label, Naviro has been excellent with his hard dance and mainstage releases. And this is an example of such, with its Slavic theming and hard-hitting drops. It's such a fun listen all around. And with all that out of the way, let's talk about the top 10 best NCS songs of 2019. Number 10. When it comes to the spot, sometimes it can shape the tone for the rest of the list, so I think it's best we give this one a hot start. Shall we? For Asketa and Natankheim, this is their biggest NCS song yet, and for the most part, it's earned its worth as one of the biggest songs of that year. One that would go on to represent trap well on NCS in the years after. As with a lot of trap, it relies on a darker and occasionally more exotic production. I especially like the warbles throughout the break, to the point where the instrumental can already stand out on its own. Now, I've been to a couple of college parties, kinda wish I was involved in more, but I think it's enough for me to make an argument that a fair bit of the popular rap scene only sounds enjoyable when you're drunk. And spoiling a bit of 2021, you'll find there that Mime is not immune to that. That being said, he does very well here in his flow and intensity to add to that aggressive tone. And it continues in the drop with a simple but confident lead sound doing exactly what it's meant to do. And the bass shots add some extra emphasis when it matters. For a post-drop, the guitars revitalize those exotic moments of the song, and I like how the bass shots still continue to maintain the energy. And it shows that when it matters, they can certainly be some warriors. Number 9. One thing I enjoy about these retro rankings is that they can show earlier sides of someone's discography, and in some cases, a sense of where all the momentum either started or grew. And while some artists found years upon years of acclaim even earlier than 2019, others came from, let's say, more humble beginnings. Would it make sense that this was the same Ellis that would go on to make Don't Say You're Sorry and Dead Man Walking? To me, it does to an extent. It's often the case with some future house artists trying to grow and experiment with certain styles. And with this being one of only 2 singles released on NCS, which feels somewhat surprising, it's a song I remember hearing before realizing it was even on the label. More of a down-to-earth future house song, although it isn't rigid to that in its entirety. A solid and consistent chord progression backs the story from the uncredited Charlotte Sands, building up once the vocals really get going. In the first drop, it starts with a breakbeat drum pattern which works well with the stuttering synth production. The second drop is where the breakbeat then alternates with future house, providing a pause therein to emphasize that transition. And for the last drop, the arps and strings add some extra ambience as it closes, and it works very well for both styles. And given what Ellis would go on to do, it's clear that he's been a better fit for Monstercat than for NCS, but given how NCS is doing now, I mean, there's always that what if. Number 8. A common theme within this list, especially near the top, is the nature of its more climactic moments. Often there are stories within songs that the drops can, if not should, emphasize. And here the quality of these drops, as well as the story as a whole, that is what makes it earn a spot on this list. One reason why this video took so long for me to make was because it took some time to figure out what to really say about certain songs. The context is different around these rankings, and in some cases more difficult to search for. There's so much I could explain outside of the production with the more recent rankings, but sometimes no extra context is really needed. With Kira's lone single on the label, there's a cinematic, adventurous tone that shapes its production through the orchestral drums in the break, the arp in the guitars, and some brighter elements as it builds up. I like how all the tension just cuts off to allow the drop to pack more of a punch as it hits. Now, as mentioned before, some of the main elements are more arp-oriented, from the guitar to the leads of the drop, and each arp works well with the chord progression. It's a sense of structure that pushes its dramatic emphasis mostly through the sound selection. And even though it's a one-off from Kira, there's certainly a new world that this song provided. Number 7. Progressive House hasn't had an overly strong 2019 on this label, and really this was the only Progressive House song that stood out this year. Maybe a biased pick in the perspective of some, but I'll stick with it. Does anyone else remember what Hardwell's Revealed label was like back in the late 2010s? How it was a beacon for mainstage electro house and carried a lot of progressive house standouts too? Well, Max Landry was one of the vocalists of that era, with songs like From Lights Above, Refuse, and Make It Right being some of my favorite progressive house songs. That era in general was one of the main influences behind even deciding to produce progressive house myself in the first place. And here with Dystria and Chasing Ghosts is one of those songs that could fit on that side of what Revealed once was. Where the drop in particular gets a lot of things right. The brightness of the lead stack along with the slides of the melody take charge of the drops and mesh well with the rolling bass. The slight harmonies for the leads add on to the drops well. It doesn't have anything overly special elsewhere, especially when the build-ups feel a bit hasty approaching the drop, but generally, Progressive House has been such a go-to for NCS's earlier years. I could go on about how the label back then compared to since 2025 has felt like night and day, and these sort of songs and the lack thereof nowadays are part of the reasons why. Number 6. So the next 3 are some of the main songs revolving around the melodic dubstep push, and this one fell back on me last minute. Even then, the details within make it worth revisiting every time. Noise, if I'm not mistaken, is actually one of the members of Abandoned, which took some time to really figure out given that they were mentioned as collaborators in various songs. Still, this song has a lot to highlight all across it. The high reverb in the ARP and ambience starts it off before Nilka's vocals come in. The atmosphere and the ambience does well to balance and make space for the vocals. I like the plucky synths used in a melody approaching the drop, and once the drop hits, it feels fairly standard at first, but stands out most when it alternates with some quick chimes that sound absolutely amazing. It doesn't stick with one main progression though, and that extra dimension tells more of a story in the second half of the drop. And the second drop is where double times with a stronger synth ARP to provide more of an impact as it concludes. It's a little inconsistent, but ultimately the chimes in the first drop and the switch up in the second drop carry the song to stand out when it matters. Number 5. Now with this next one, I remember hearing this quite a bit elsewhere, and I mean understandably so. It's earned that prestige. Initially, this guy has been more involved in collaborations with Rival, but this song is one of the biggest for Cadmium to explore his own sound. It's probably the song that has stuck around for me the most out of his discography, at least at the moment. A melancholic cut that's fairly adventurous in the chord progression. Quite frankly, it's not one I've really heard before. Along with the piano and the breaks, you have the uncredited Reese Lemonius taking charge of the vocals and showing the perspective of a breakup. No overly extravagant layers in the lyricism, the tone is more straight to the point to say that nothing can be done to fix it. The orchestral percussion is one of the big highlights with the break, especially as it builds up. I really like that moment of tension before the hook finishes, and once it does, the drop goes through a couple of impact hits before the synths really start to kick in. The pulse ear candies add an extra layer, and it does well to provide space for the piano and strings when need be. The one issue I have with the song is that the drop can be a bit hard to follow at times, where it sounds like it starts in the middle of the chord progression it had from earlier. But it's still a great song and a great representation of that melodic dubstep influx that the label has made the most of. Number 4. And continuing on the topic of melodic dubstep standouts, to think this is Minerva's only NCS release, and Nitrix's first out of only 2, the other being Runaway with Chime. And let's get this out of the way, Nitrix absolutely carries at certain moments here. The vocal production around the song is great, with the reverb helping push it further. And the backing ambience and the ARPs within do well to sustain the break and help Nitrix lead it. The main theme with these last 3 songs is that the drops are led by strong chords when it comes to progression and synth stack, or sound selection basically. The rising ARP along with the growls and fills alternate with the chords to provide more of a punch. The second break takes everything I've mentioned before to carry this song to a new level, with Nitrix's vocals and especially the background ARP. Overall, it's a great melodic dubstep song all round. So much both in and out of the drops that's worth finding all over again. Number 3. Talk about a song that came from out of nowhere. It's not often when a song clicks so well from first listen, but when it does, it's something special. As I was browsing some rankings for 2019, I was amazed from first hearing the song. A one-off from Marin and Shelby, and a synth pop tune that combines a great chord progression with a colorful sound. Shelby's vocals, along with the piano, take control of the break and make the most of it. But really the main reason why the song is so high is because of the drop. The bright sparkly highs of the synths are really great, and the bass line has a lot of structure with the electric guitar-esque mid-bass involved. It's a great blend of electropop and future bass that I would argue indirectly takes from the melodic dubstep trend I mentioned earlier, at least drop-wise. And since this release, Marin's found success in the likes of Revealed, Protocol, and Smash the House while alternating with various styles of house music. So I think he's been doing just fine since then. Still deserves a big return back to the label if he wants one. Number 2. What's funny is that had I done this for 2018, the artists in my top 2 probably would have been the exact same. It goes to show how memorable both of these artists have been in and around that time. And if you want the NCS song that has carried the most energy throughout 2019, it's this. In NCS, there are 2 particular sides to highlight with Navirou: the slower-paced house style following in the footsteps of Alan Walker, and his more energetic live-set bangers that he's carried over to rave culture in the years after. He's found a big crowd in both, and I would say he's found a bigger off-label crowd in the latter that he has since catered to. Voices in My Head represents that explosive combination of big room, trance, and hard dance. I mean, it's classified as such. The dark, haunting atmosphere is nothing new for Navirou, but as with a lot of hard dance songs, the drop can make or break this. And here, the first drop is absolutely epic. A complete burst of energy where the lead stack excels in both melody and sound selection. And the second drop starts with a solid enough anti-climax where the rolling psytrance bass and the synth stabs maintain the switch up before moving back into the style of the first drop. It's that mainstage production that Navirou has done very well with, and it's an emphatic live set energy that is few and far between nowadays, especially on this label. Before we move on to my number 1 spot, I'd like to take a moment to advertise my other channels. Over on Iceberg Gaming, I've been working on some Pokemon Showdown and Planet Coaster videos, as well as a couple of other games. I'd like to do some rankings there as well, either top 10 or tier list rankings with various games I've played. And over on Iceberg Music, you can find my own releases. I've been doing both originals and remixes this year, so I'd really appreciate if you check them out. But with that out of the way, let's move on to number 1. It's a little bittersweet revisiting this song. And yeah, I still do think his run around 2023 and 2024 doesn't hold a candle to what he's done back then. Mainly because what he's had back then is still fantastic now. This was one of the first Diamond Eye songs I remember hearing back then, and it's one that has stuck around for me since. It starts off simple with some really great plucky chords and Diamond Eyes' vocals, which he has almost always been very reliable with. And the drops rely on bright synths that carry the rhythm from the break and provide some pretty euphoric elements. The scarce vocal chops are a great way to add on to these drops. There's generally a really good balance between the drops and the off drops, even if the off drops don't rely on too much to start. The returning hook with the continuing drums works very well to close out the second drop. But the final drop changes things completely, switching over to Jersey Club and relying more on the bass line while also providing some sporadic synths and some background arps that sound amazing. Heading into this list, this song was easily the most memorable for me back then, and that hasn't changed revisiting this now. That is why Stars by Diamond Eyes is the best NCS song of 2019. And that'll wrap up this video. Let me know of your favorites in the comments below, and if you guys enjoyed, feel free to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll talk to you in the next video.